So 2020 and the Nintendo Switch hasn't really been the greatest year for me because most of the first party games I just wasn't super interested in. Sure, there's been really good stuff like the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection, Paper Mario the Origami King, but games like Xenoblade Chronicles, I've already played that a bunch of times before on other systems. Games like Animal Crossing, I just wasn't too interested in that game anymore. So it looked like 2020 was going to be a bit of a quiet year until Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was announced. Now, Hyrule Warriors, the original game, I absolutely love it. I own it on the Wii U, I own it on the 3DS, I even own it on the Nintendo Switch, and I've put hundreds of hours into that game across all three of the versions of it. But one thing that was going to be interesting with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was, whereas Hyrule Warriors, the original game, was a celebration of all things from the Legend of Zelda universe and subsequent timelines as well, Age of Calamity instead was a prequel to Breath of the Wild, meaning that you didn't have quite as much stuff to dig into, and it was going to be more of a story-driven game than the previous version of the game. Well, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity has come out, and there's been a bit of controversy, kind of a low score on Metacritic. Some reviews are very positive, some reviews are a bit on the negative side. So what's the truth with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity? Is this a good game? Is this a game worth checking out? Well, I mean, that's why I'm here, and that's what we're going to figure out in this video. What's going on, guys? I'm RGT85. If this is your first time on the channel, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. But without any further ado, let's get into Age of Calamity for the Nintendo Switch and talk about this game and find out the truth about it. So the story of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity takes place 100 years before the events of Breath of the Wild. Calamity Ganon is attempting to be revived to wreak havoc on Hyrule, so Zelda, Link, Impa, and others must put a stop to his revival. Along the way, you meet the cast of characters from Breath of the Wild and a few new characters as well that will help fill in the events leading up to Breath of the Wild, sort of. Well, yes, it is a direct prequel to the Breath of the Wild game. The game does change some things leading up to the events of Breath of the Wild that would impact the game due to using different timelines, which, if you know anything about the Legend of Zelda series, there's like, well, a million different timelines to begin with, and supposedly it all comes together and makes sense, but I've never really been able to figure that out. Even some of the key events are changed in a big way in this game, which should make for an interesting Breath of the Wild 2 game if an explanation for these events is given. The main takeaway I had from this story, though, wasn't so much the events that transpired before Breath of the Wild, but really the rise of the Zelda character herself. To me, she was the main focal point of everything involving the story in this game, and seeing her character development, the highs and the lows, and her becoming a leader was actually super interesting, and probably the most in-depth look we've ever gotten at her as a character. She felt extremely human in this game, and you could like make a connection with her, which was a real treat for me, as I personally love watching her growth throughout Age of Calamity. Of course, though, gameplay is what you're looking forward to in Age of Calamity. Now, if you played the original Hyrule Warriors, which, I mean, you should have, I've bought it on 3 systems, you could buy it on 1, you should have a general idea of what to expect in Age of Calamity, but there are some major differences that add, well, quite a bit of depth to the game, I feel. Of course, you have your standard attacks and your strong attacks, which can be mixed together for various combos. But a new addition to this game is the ability to use the Sheikah Slate moves from Breath of the Wild on the fly. You can use bombs, you can use stasis to lock in enemies in place and launch them, the Ice Pillar, and the Magnet ability. All of these play a major role in the gameplay because they can be very impactful moves that will break down larger enemies' defense systems if done at the right time, allowing you to do major damage on them. What's more is the fact that these moves actually change depending on which character you use in the game, meaning that some are better with the abilities than others. For example, when you use the bombs with Link, you get a targeting system where you can throw multiple bombs in a succession of 4, whereas some characters will just throw a bomb at random for their move. Because of this, it's honestly pretty fun to explore the different characters and their abilities. Beyond that, there are also wizards on the map based on 3 elements: fire, ice, and electricity. When you defeat them, they will drop a replenishment for a rod that every character has, and you can use these abilities on the fly as well. The health system has been redone too, which is mapped to the same menu as the rod abilities. Finding food on the map will put it in a holding spot, and you can heal on the fly. All of these changes make for a pretty different experience than the original Hyrule Warriors, but really I think it's for the better because there's so much more you can do with your attacks and strategies. You can also order your teammates to go to a certain location and take down enemies as well, making it feel like you have a bit more control over things. And even beyond that, you can control all 4 of the divine beasts at different points throughout the game and really just wreak a lot of havoc. I really enjoyed the Divine Beast segments. Although I felt they were a bit easy, they can be really fun, and it's a good break in the standard gameplay that Age of Calamity offers by offering something completely different. As I mentioned with the bigger enemies, using the Sheikah Slate abilities at the right time will allow you to do some major damage, and this is yet another new addition to the game. Characters like Moblins, Lynels, and Hynix will appear on the map in the playthrough throughout the game, all of which of course are larger creatures from Breath of the Wild, and you pretty much go into like a one-on-one battle with them. You basically have to time your Sheikah Slate attacks right in order to drop their defense, in which then you can hack away at their defense until you do a big hit on them. You can also dodge at the right time as well and hack away at their defense too, which once again adds a whole nother layer of strategy to the game. These battles essentially feel like mini bosses that you encounter, and I like the fact that you can't just sort of button mash, but you actually have to think things through in order to defeat these enemies. One thing I was interested in with Age of Calamity was going to be the length of the game overall. Now, the original Hyrule Warriors was honestly long as hell, with tons of endgame stuff to do, characters to unlock, secret weapons, adventure maps, and much more. But like I said, that game tapped into everything from the Legend of Zelda games, so it definitely had a lot more material to work with. With Age of Calamity being a direct prequel, it obviously couldn't have the elements from Ocarina of Time or anything like that because, well, it wouldn't make sense in this timeline, but I think they did a good job with the amount of stuff you could do in the game even after the credits roll. Now, my playthrough for the main story took me about 12 to 13 hours, but honestly, I skipped a ton of side quests and missions that the game offers. This is actually a look at my map with the game now, with the yellow indicators being missions or tasks that I can currently do, which, I mean, is clearly a lot. What's more is even new missions open up as well after you defeat the game that are essentially more challenging and give you some more unlockable stuff. Now, while I do miss the adventure maps and all of the crazy cast of characters from the original Hyrule Warriors, it really wouldn't have made sense in this game, and I'm happy I still have a ton of stuff to do in Age of Calamity. What's more is that there are Koroks hidden in each level as well, and finding a lot of them gives you a prize, but I haven't found a lot of them yet, so I don't know what that prize is. The game just sort of tells you that. Always dangling a carrot in front of your face to make you play more. Damn you, Age of Calamity, damn you! Now, of course, though, we have to get into something that, well, everyone is pretty interested in. The performance of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. All of the footage you have seen in this video was captured at 1080p 30 frames per second, since 30 frames per second is the baseline for this game. Now, I originally talked about a week or two ago about the frame rate of the Age of Calamity demo and really how it was sort of a mess, and many people were hopeful that this would be fixed in the final product of the game. So was the frame rate fixed? Well, no, not really, but there is a catch. Some levels are impacted way more than other levels, and really it makes no sense to me. There were instances where I was playing Age of Calamity and I was like, alright, the game is probably about to get very choppy, there's a lot of enemies on screen, a lot of things going on, but it didn't. And then you have missions like the first Death Mountain mission, where there's a ton of pop-up and general choppiness throughout, even though there's no action on the screen happening. I will say that the game seems to get better as things go deeper into it, or maybe just a bit more consistent with the frame rate. Now, part of me feels that this could be because of the graphical style used in the game that causes some of this slowdown, because at times the game looks absolutely gorgeous. Things like weather effects, great lighting, very vivid colors, and some really highly detailed textures that you definitely didn't see in Breath of the Wild are there, and it's almost like maybe the Switch is, well, just struggling a little bit to make it all work together. Now, if a patch does end up coming along that improves the frame rate and some of the pop-up, that would be great, but I mean, it's still more than playable because, I mean, I ended up beating the game and still want to play it more. Now, on the audio side of things, the voice acting in this game is honestly top-notch, and Zelda really stands out for her voice acting. There are nice little nuances such as echoes when you're in a large indoor area that you don't hear when you're in an outdoor area, and the music is mostly good, with it being pretty much straight from Breath of the Wild with a few new musical tracks. Personally, I do kind of miss the remix Zelda songs done in a rock style from the original Hyrule Warriors game because I just thought that was awesome, and really I'm probably going to use a song from that original game as the background music of this video, but I can appreciate them keeping it authentic. So really, what is the truth about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity? Is it a 79 like Metacritic says? Were the negative reviews right about this game? Well, it's kind of interesting. Now, if you aren't a fan of warrior-style games, Age of Calamity isn't going to change your mind because, well, at its core, it's just like all the other Warriors games. The original Hyrule Warriors stuck out to me because of the fact that it incorporated one of my favorite franchises into the mixture, and it made for a very unique experience. Now, Age of Calamity being a more focused game with only using Breath of the Wild material made me think it wouldn't have as much content as the first game, but I think it does. It just sort of presents it in a bit of a different style. Age of Calamity even offers a 2-player mode that you could do local co-op, but if you think the frame rate issues are annoying in single player, you might want to avoid that mode altogether and be like me and wish they would have just put conventional online in the game, but I mean, it's a Nintendo game, what do you expect? I still think that Age of Calamity is a great game though, that Zelda fans should definitely pick up, if only for the additional story elements that are prevalent in this game. It doesn't play like a traditional Zelda game, but I mean, neither did Breath of the Wild, and people love that. If the frame rate issues could be ironed out, this could potentially be a contender for my overall game of the year. But as it stands, it might still end up being my favorite Switch game of the year anyways, because it was the one I was looking forward to the most, and for the most part, I definitely feel like it delivered. Overall game of the year though, I gotta give it to Miles Morales, baby. I love that game. Alright, so that is the truth about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. No punches held back, all of the nitty-gritty details that you guys deserve to know about the game, and those are my thoughts on it as a fan of the original Hyrule Warriors game. So let me know in the comments section down below what you think of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Is this a game that you have picked up? Do you plan on picking it up during the holiday season? Or are you not a fan of the warrior-style games? Because if you're really not a fan of the warrior-style games, you're probably not going to like this game unless you're a die-hard Zelda fan. But I definitely think it's a step in the right direction for the Warriors franchise. The more focused story really makes for a very interesting and unique warrior style experience, and I think it's a really good game overall. And as always guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Be sure to check out other videos on the channel as well, and as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Later.